I'll take 2 season tickets to the theater. Now, I have one request, though. I would like my seat to be towards the back because I normally wear my modest hair to the theater, but sometimes I just want to be myself, right? I just want to stand out and wear my big hair. Oh, I'll call you back. Hi, everyone. Oh, my gosh. Thanks for coming back again to Auntie. It has been a wild ride. All of the likes, all of the shares, all of the listens. You've made me flip my lid. I mean, my lid is flipped. It's off. It's like Tupperware and it's making that fart noise and it's gone. It's ridiculous. Anyway, we are talking to movers, shakers, motivators, and entrepreneurs. And today is no different. I have dubbed this fella my mentor lately. And he is just like, what are you talking about, Kasha? You're looking at me like you're crazy, but it's the truth. And he has helped me in so many different ways, and we've been having so much fun together. Here he is, the fabulous Danny Hoskins.
Ooh, hello.
Hello. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you? Should I keep the phone out to the side?
Well, I do this because, I don't know if you know, I'm wearing lady things today. It gets in the way. No, we can put them down. Watch. Listen, you can still hear me. It's like, this is modern technology here at Rock Vox Studios. How about that?
I teach kids. We'll probably get into this.
Yeah.
But one of the things that we did once, they had a scene, and they're like 19 years old, and they had a scene with a phone in it, and so this is how they used the phone. They went,
right.
Hello. All right. And then I let them go like the whole semester to see if anyone in the class would like say something to them, like. And then they pick up the receiver, and no one said anything.
No one realized.
No one in the class knew how to use like a dial phone or a push button phone like this.
When Steve and I moved in our first house, our kids had never seen a phone. And in the basement, one of the things, it's not a selling point, but I was like, I love all this retro stuff. And in the basement, there was that like avocado green phone in the laundry room. And like, I just could imagine like a box of Chardonnay next to that, and just back in the day, and doing laundry and just like talking on the horn. And Jessica, our youngest, was like, what's that? She thought it was some sort of timer for the washing machine, and she had never seen it. I was like, no, that's a telephone. So, oh my gosh. So we have been in the thick of it for years now. And I look at these telephones, and these are actually things I've used in different plays over the years. And theater is my heart. It's where I really got started with regard to this character that is Mrs. Kasha Davis. And my roots go back far with you in terms of Blackfriars Theater and the JCC as a director. And I've had the privilege of working with a lot of different people over the years, but there's something really special about a director who is an actor, who is a motivator, and a teacher. Along the way, sometimes when you have a director, they're guiding you through and just to get to the end result. But every show I've done with you, I've learned something new, and that has just been an absolute joy. And now, here we are working together, not in so many different ways. I don't even know where to begin. But we'll start first and foremost with our project, Imagination Station. And we've had Mary on, and the three of us conjured up this amazing television show. Tell me what your experience has been like on the journey of Imagination Station and directing and writing and acting in this in our children's our family program.
Family programming. Yes, the comedy. First of all, you're so sweet. You're always so sweet. You're always so kind. And I was listening to the first episode and just really, I've heard the story so many times and know it, but to hear you talk about it over and over again, knowing where Mrs. Kasha Davis comes from, that it comes from your roots, it comes from your theater roots, that you're grounded in this background, this training, these techniques, and really in storytelling as the basis for what you do. And that's, I think, part of why you're so successful and why Mrs. Kasha Davis is so powerful and moving. and vibrant is because you have this background in theater, because it's based in technique, it's based in storytelling, it's based in human connection and how do we move one another, how do we excite one another, how do we challenge one another. And I love that. And every time I hear that, I love it. And it's so true. But I think, I think that comes across in Imagination Station. I remember, from the beginning, feeling, when Mary first came, when we were running Blackfriars together, Mary and I, and Mary Tabali Hoffman, and said, I found this, I want to do this drag story hour, and Kasha's on board, and we want to do it. And I was like, okay, let's do it. Yeah. I had no idea where it was going to take us or what it would be. And at that time, there was no semblance of any sort of social or political aspect to that.
Not at all.
That work. It was just about the kids. It was about the families and about the kids, and connecting and giving an opportunity for them to be playful in the mornings and to have Mrs. Kasha Davis read them stories, which was wonderful.
And you're both new parents at the time, both you and Mary.
Both new parents. I have a picture of you and Phoebe. I think she was 6 months old or 5 months old at the first one.
Yeah.
That you're holding her like up here, and I think it was the first or second one. But it's grown into something that's so wonderful and so powerful, and we know can be so moving and so impactful if it can just get out there.
Right.
And it's been a joy. It's been a joy because one of the things that, and you talk about this, about your journey, about how, when you quit telemarketing, when you quit the call center and said, I'm going to give this 100%, how scary that is and how much, but also how rewarding it is to do what you love. Mm-hmm. I've been really, really lucky in my career to have most of my path be in what I love, in theater, in teaching. But it gets amplified to a whole new level when you get to work with your friends and you get to work with people that you love and that you care about. And you also are working on a project that is so near and dear to your heart. I think Imagination Station, for all of us, and for so many people who still come to the Imagination Story Hours, and have championed this project and supported this project, really feel that it's necessary in the world, that it's, it's how you and Mary describe it, about it being, little Mr. Rogers, little Pee-wee, Pee-wee's Playhouse, and Mrs. Doubtfire, that we need that now. Families need that now.
Well, and what was really special to me, I mentioned that you were both new parents, is that we had representation, and you are both allies. And that was so special for me, to feel that Mrs. Kasha Davis, Ed, gay man, he, him, Mrs. Kasha Davis, she, her, is accepted, is celebrated, and is encouraged to be this storyteller for your children. Not just children from the community, not that, but they're specifically, you're allowing an hour of quote unquote babysitting time, with the kids, because, and to me that became really special. And knowing that we had worked together in so many different scenarios with the theater, I knew that if there's anything about Danny, there's heart. And I was like, okay. And I know that the same with Mary, but Mary, Mary's got this drive. We're going to make it happen. So as a team, I got really inspired. And going back to the original, we didn't have a lot of flack, but there was one time we had some protesters, and I'll never forget. When I'm encountering protesters, I kind of cave into myself. I get a little bit like, make myself small. Don't get too confrontational. Danny Hoskins ran outside and was like, get off of that property. You have, and it just, I felt like my friends got my back. And then we immediately had to have this like backstage meeting, because the words that these protesters were using and the words that we were hearing on the radio at the time and, online, the comments were saying that we have an agenda. You have this agenda. You're forcing your agenda. And you just stopped cold in your tracks and looked at Mary and I, and you were like, yes, we do have an agenda. If you happen to see someone different in the world, treat them with kindness. And that was so impactful for me, not just as a person, but as this performer, and I hate the word brand of Mrs. Kasha Davis, but it changed my life because I was like, oh yeah, that's all this is. Because it's so easy to get Story Hour or Imagination Station, a program for families hosted by a drag queen. It's easy to get it twisted. It's easy to have this sort of like misconception of what the art of drag, how the art of drag can be for all ages, and that like maybe something inappropriate is going to happen in front of children. So I thank you for that, because that was just this moment where I was like, oh, well, that's easy. Right? It's not complicated at all. And sometimes the least complicated things end up being the hardest. But, here we had this mission. And I think what makes it so special is that you are parents.
Yeah.
So, why do you want drag queens reading to your kids?
Well, I think it's also a way to diffuse that argument or diffuse that fight. Like it's not a fight. It's not, we don't have to defend ourselves directly against all these allegations of what they think drag queens are doing with children at these story hours. It's just the truth that we just are. And you're just treating people with kindness, and you're just showing them that there's a community and a place for everyone, and we all deserve that.
Right.
And I think a lot of what I connect with, and have started more and more to connect with over the years, not just getting to know you as a friend beyond a colleague, but as a friend and a human being, and knowing that we have similar feelings about how to live our lives and how to treat people, but that as a parent, to see what you're doing for all of us as parents, not just the kids. It's about the parents. It's about the adults. It's about the young adults that come. That there's teenagers that come that don't have kids. There have been grandparents that come that don't have grandkids with them. There's been grandparents that come with their grandkids. There's everyone that's coming because there's something that you're giving us. That Mrs. Kasha Davis is doing for us, that you're doing in those moments of storytelling, in those moments of connection, that's just creating a space. It's creating space and offering space for everyone to be joyful and loving and authentic and celebratory and supportive of one another. And if there is a lesson or if there is anything in there, it's what comes from the book. What the themes of the book are, but it's also within the way that you talk to us and the way you encourage us, and even the young people, the way you encourage the kids to just be free, to take some chances in their lives and make some choices for what they dream about, what they want to be, and what they aspire to be, and what they love, and to chase that. And that there are challenges, and you got to jump over little puddles or speed bumps, and then you got to be grateful. And breathe and focus.
Right.
I don't know. I talk a lot. You can just jump in.
I think it's great. It's perfect. No, but
it does come from being a parent. You're right. I think a lot of it comes from being a parent, the perspective and seeing what you're offering, and also to us as parents. And you've talked about this, how you've had parents come up to you and what they've said to you. What they've said to you, I think, is beyond beautiful and powerful, and that's
why we do it.
That's why we do it.
That's why. I mean, for me, the relationship I had with my dad, my parents have passed, and I feel them most when I'm doing Story Hour, because they know how much I love kids. And that was one of their struggles. I mean, growing up in the 70s and 80s, they were like, gay people don't have children. Like they only knew what they knew. And so they were doing their best to protect me. I know this now. Back then it was different. And I know that they're there and they're like, oh, we're so glad you're doing this, And I think what I get so excited about what we wrote, what we created for television, whether it's going to get picked up or not, we're not sure. Is it the right time? We're not sure. Are we the right people? We don't know. But we did it, and I know I have this impatience. I was like, Danny, we need to make a television show. We need to make a television show. And you're like, no, let's just see how let's improvise in the next. So we took several years of doing the live story hours to get sort of our minds wrapped around. And then, of course, COVID happened and we had the opportunity to create the television program. And now it's like, it's our baby. We put this together. And every time I watch it, sure, I can go through and be like, that's bad makeup, or I should maybe this is different. The heart is there. There's so much heart in it. And what I find with what we're creating and what we will continue to create one way or another is that in this world of trying to find uniqueness and differences, and however we dress ourselves, we can see in these times when we come together and just listen how similar we really are. Mm-hmm. And I think that was in many ways life-saving for me over the years, to know that I'm not so broken. I'm not so different. I may have some things of ways I'd like to express myself that aren't in the norm, but ultimately it's decoration. You know, it's a hat. It's a sparkly blouse, as I used to like to say. And when I was a kid, I remember sitting there, and I tell this story so frequently, but I remember sitting with my uncles and my dad, who are these butchy, masculine fellas, and they were like, "What? This one's in the Air Force, this one was in the Army," and they turned to me and said, "What branch are you going to be in?" I said, "I'm going to be in the Salvation Army," and they laughed, of course, and to this day, I feel like that is essentially my goal, is to do for others and to find other people who are interested in sharing these stories, and with the hopes to make a better path for people. Mm-hmm. More recently, in our live story hour, one of our fellow theater friends is bringing his grandson, Peter. And Peter is an actor in Rochester, a voice actor, and fantastic. And he's got his grandson who's just thrilled to be there and gives me a hug every time. But I see such joy on Peter's face. And so when I have the privilege of standing there in the audience and looking around the room at these faces, I just see lights going on in the kids' faces, but just as much in the adults. Mm-hmm. And that's the magic. I've never really experienced that in theater, right? Before, because you put on a production and you kind of have an agenda you've got to get through. Uh-huh. But this is so like real and live in the moment. We have a plan, but I'm seeing their faces more than I normally would. And it's been some of the most special times on stage. And you keep us on track. Mary keeps us funded. And we keep going. Yeah. And I know there's more to come. So we're excited. We have we went to New York City together to make a presentation, and we got a partnership with Jared Creative. Yeah. And who knows what's next? We can only hope. But I think we stay grounded in, we love our community, and we do this here. Mm-hmm. So that's the aspect. So you were an adjunct professor for years, a director, an actor, and now and then you ran Blackfriars Theater as an artistic and managing director. And so to me, these are all like, as you said, it motivates me so much that you're doing what you love. You're wearing what you love. You're wearing your drag. You've got your Captain America.
I'm wearing my drag. This is my
right?
drag.
Yes. Well, it is. And I love that. Every time ever since I've known you, always have these fun, superhero blouses, I'll call them, on.
Blouses. Yes, I have a lot of superhero blouses.
You have some superhero blouses.
Yeah. During COVID, I restocked my whole drawers with superhero blouses. That's what I did with my COVID money.
But that's truly like, to me, that is drag. And so then I get this call, and you're like, I'd like us to work together and teach a drag class. I mean, we're on break this particular week.
We're on spring break.
We're on spring break, but we're halfway through, I guess, right? Mm-hmm. And we have worked together to create something that I believe is also very special, in that we're doing the culture, the theory, and the performance of drag, and we're respectfully just learning from each other and lifting each other up in this process, and melding that passion of theater and drag together. And again, they're not kids, they're college students, but they feel like kids to me. I'm getting so old. But it's so special to have them, just to watch them grow and watch them experience drag in this way. And who knows? I mean, this could be something that we can build upon. So how is it feeling for you to have, you've taught so many different acting classes before. Is this different? Do you see the similarities? Do you feel like...
Well, I definitely think there's similarities, but there's so much that I'm learning too in it. But I think for the students, they want it, they crave it, they love it. I think there's a joy in the room. Even though sometimes it feels like it's 8:30 at night because it's a late night. There's a night class, so they're a little tired as we go through. It's a 3-hour class, but I think there's an excitement and electricity because this is something they love. This is something that's a part of their growing up. It's a part of the pop culture of their world.
Right.
What I wear was a part of the pop culture as comic books and as action figures, as toys, was a part of the pop culture of me growing up. And if there was a class like on Marvel superheroes, I would totally have been into it. I'd be like, yes, I'm going to do that. And so I can feel that and see that and sense that that sort of connection to the class, that this is something that they're passionate about and they actually get to explore it. With you and when this is Kasha Davis, they get to explore it with an international celebrity drag housewife, and that's amazing for them. And not only for them, we're doing it once, and hopefully our goal would be that Brockport would pick it up,
right,
and do it every year and maybe every semester. And we're going to work towards that. But even with the students who weren't able to get into the class, talking to other students, they were so excited about it because this is their world. This is what they love and what they're passionate about, and they want to know more about it. So they were so excited that we were doing this, that we had this as an offering.
Right.
And so, I think there's similar in the performance aspect. There's similarities between what we're doing performance wise and acting classes. But I also think there's really unique elements to this that also I'm learning with the interviews that we're doing with a number of our drag special guests that are coming to class, which is awesome. And really giving them exposure in a much wider sense, in a much more immediate sense. They're talking to, not only do they have you as leading the class, but they're talking to these special guests that are in this field right now, in this career,
right.
And have been successful. And I love so much of what you and what these other artists have been echoing from each other without even really knowing what the other person is saying. And how they're talking about community, how they're talking about self-expression, how they're talking about acceptance, how they're talking about perseverance, how they're looking at how they view struggles and they view challenges and what drives them to overcome those and pursue those, to be their authentic self, to express themselves in all these different ways, any way possible. And so much of it comes back to tenets that you've spoken about in your life and in your journey, and really powerful tenets about family and community. And I love how so many of them talk about their mom. We've had a couple special guests that talk about, that their mom is still alive because of the characters they've chosen or the work that they're doing. Mm-hmm. And so it's and there's just so much to do.
There's so much. Well, I think the thing that we realized is that we with our class description and with the syllabus, right? Is that the right word? We were creating that. We were creating all. I mean, I went to school. I can't remember the words. They're just escaping me. But in all honesty, it's a learning process for all of us. And I got a little bit of that kind of like, oh my gosh, I hope I'm going to give enough information. It's not possible. It's not possible. We realized in some of our meetings it was not possible to literally go through everything that there was in drag. It's because as an art form like music, you can't just have a class on music for one semester and be like, we covered it all. Right? And so it was ignorant of me to think that. But I have been diving in and reading so many different books and finding the right ways to take a look at like an overview. And in that overview, I think the two things, I don't know if you'll remember this, but one thing that we started to notice that was like cyclical, that things would it would get celebrated and then it would get suppressed. And so that kind of put a little bit of an ease on my anxiety level with the current political environment and some of the legislation that is attempting to be, passed, or the different things, because it seems like the end of the world sometimes when we see some of this negativity. But when we researched the history, we realized that it goes back for ages.
Yeah.
And I think to myself, back to that little boy on the porch, like, why can't we just be kind to each other? Why can't we just celebrate? So we have drag kings, drag kings. We were in our class, we were realizing, in my ignorance, I thought it was something that was more new, let's just say within the last so many years, but they've always been drag kings and queens, and drag kings were celebrated and were paid this exorbitant amount of like money on stage, but then could get arrested if they walked off stage in a suit.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's just an article of clothing.
Yeah.
And how we politicize this and how we turn it into condemning people for just a way of expression. Yet we can celebrate different people with regard to, we talked about Mrs. Doubtfire gets celebrated. And literally, it's my story. They get divorced. I didn't have kids, but he wants to be closer to his kids. He creates a character that is a dowdy lady, and takes care of the kids, and then ends up with a children's television show in the end. And everybody's standing ovation at the theater. Meanwhile, if he got divorced because he was gay, I don't know if the play would have taken off. Yeah. This is where I thank our allies. And I am so appreciative of people like yourself, because it's not an issue. It's just, as you said, people are who they are. And their expectation is that we're good to each other. And when we freaking mess that up, that all we do is say we're sorry, like when we make a mistake.
Yeah.
So again, I think that's so powerful. And you've essentially assembled this little theater family right now. You've got a choreographer, singer, dancer, actor, wife, and you are all of these things yourself. Are the kids following in those footsteps?
Oh yeah. They're Phoebe had a couple friends over, and she wanted to show them the musical Waitress, the Sarah Bareilles musical, and they didn't want to watch it. They didn't know what musical was, and she got upset. She's like, "Don't you want to play Waitress?" And they have like the waitress dresses, and they're gonna be in it.
Yeah,
they're gonna be in it.
And the same thing I think about with Mary's kids. I mean, when we're there on a Saturday morning preparing for story hour, and the kids are all there, and they get to run around through the seats and play act and do their thing. It's just like, oh my gosh, what a dream come true.
Well, today I had sent Kasha a picture earlier today. We were Sophie. I was listening to the other podcast, and Sophie heard your voice and immediately came running over. I said, "Where's Kasha? I want to see the picture." And she wanted to see. I was like, "This is just voice. This is just audio, buddy."
Right.
Oh, and she sat on my lap and still just sat there and watched the iPad and listened. And then I told Phoebe I was leaving today, and Phoebe was like, "Where are you going?" I was like, "I'm going to go talk to Mrs. Kasha Davis for a while." And she sprinted into the kitchen and started to put her boots on, and she wanted to come. I was like, "Oh, it's just me, buddy. You got to stay." She's oh. So yeah.
So now people listening or watching might be like, "Listen, this is really nice that you've got this, relationship and you work together and you do all these different things. But what does Danny know? I mean, he's never been in drag. Have you ever done drag?"
I thought about doing, like the late night TV show host with the picture. I thought about printing it out and bringing it today. I was in drag. Someone did me up deliciously in drag at one point. I even shaved my chest for it.
I know. What was that experience like for you?
As a performer, I come at it fully from a performance standpoint, from a character standpoint. I loved it. It was exciting. I could feel the sense of, even more so than when I'm a character on stage and playing a different character on stage, where it's always a part of you, regardless what you're doing. You're always a part of that character. But I also felt like I could be so much more free, that there were no constraints on how I could act or how I could express myself or how I could feel. And I felt a lot, especially in my calves and my heels of the big high heeled boots.
If I remember correctly, it was during a time for a promotional thing.
Yeah,
Or was it a fundraiser?
Partly, it was a fundraiser for Blackfriars, and it was partly Mary's fault that it happened.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was in order to get to there were kind of carrots along the way of donations.
Yeah,
so if
that's
you got
right.
to this point, if we raised this much money, this would happen. If we raised this much, I think one year I got duct taped to a wall like 3 feet in the air.
I love that.
And there's a picture of me holding Sophie or holding Phoebe. But this one was, if we got all the way to our goal, I would do a performance in drag.
Right.
And you would dress me up. You would design it. And so we didn't make it, but there was one more event left in the cycle of the year. And Mary at the beginning of the event said, just so you know, I might do something today. And I said, okay, as she does sometimes. She'll just go, I think I might try something. Okay, whatever. We'll see what happens. And I had no idea. And so at the end of the event, she said, okay, before we leave today, I think we were down like $200 or $300 more to raise. Mary would know exactly to the penny. And she said, if we raise that before we all leave tonight, I'm making this carrot stick, and Danny's going to do drag. So tonight we can make it happen. And I think we raised over what we needed to raise by a couple $100, I think. And that was it. And so by the end of the night, we're like, all right, we got to do it.
I loved it.
Drag.
It was fantastic. Do you remember your drag name? Do we have?
My drag name would be, if I followed your pattern, would be Tilly Brazee. would be an old broad dog.
Well, my grandmother's best friend, her name was Tilly Slutter. And why I didn't name myself, although it wouldn't work for kids.
Yeah.
You know,
that'd be a whole different road.
That was her actual name. And she, this is like the 60s. They would go on cruises together, and my grandmother would be done up like to the nines. They were both hairdressers. My grandmother was a performer, so it was like extra done up. Mm-hmm. And Tilly Slutter, poses on these beds, just like, and I was like, oh my God, I want to be Tilly Slutter as a kid. And nobody knew. My sisters knew. They're like, you're Tilly Slutter.
My sisters knew.
So as we start to wrap up, as an actor, what has been your favorite role that you've had the opportunity to play?
Oh man, I've been really lucky throughout my career. Probably like halfway through, when I was in my early 30s, I got to do one of my favorite musicals, Little Shop of Horrors,
right?
In summer stock up in Wisconsin, and I got to play. Oh my God, Seymour! I got to play.
Yes.
I got to play Seymour, and that was wonderful. That was awesome.
I imagine.
And I think one of my favorite roles, though, as non-actor, I was talking to Lonnie about this the other day. My wife, though, was Rocky Horror Show, was directing that, was directing you in that. I think that was one of the all-time best things.
Well, I get nervous about doing shows with you directing, because when you directed Irma Vep, my mother passed away and we had to cancel a weekend. And then when we did,
I don't mean to laugh.
I know, it's funny. Sorry. It's fine. They're fine. They're fine. They're dead, but they're fine. But then when we did Rocky, we were closing up my parents' house because my dad had passed away. And then you were like, oh my gosh, Brockport's wants to do prom. And it's a dream role for me to play Barry. And you had offered this to me. And I was like, well, yeah, but I don't know. Hopefully everybody stays alive for this one. Because some kind of thing happens with the two of us. But we're going to be fine. We're going to be fine. So what is a role that you would love to play that you haven't played yet?
A role that I would love to play that I haven't played yet. Man. Oh, one of my favorite musicals for the music too, for the story too, is Memphis.
Okay.
But I'm getting to that point in my career where you start to age out of those. I just did probably one of the last roles on my bucket list that I'll get to play, which was Tata in Ragtime.
Oh, it was amazing.
And that was one of the roles on my bucket list. So I was able to check that off. And I think I told Lonnie afterwards, I was like, okay, that's probably the last one that's on the bucket list that I can, because I'm starting to age out of those.
Very powerful, very honest, loved it, but enjoyed the production. And I will say for me, of course, Barry is an absolute dream. In drag, it's often been Albin, but I think it would be really cool to a drag performance of Hello Dolly and to be Dolly Levi, because it's my ultimate musical. And I mean, it's because it's a retro thing and she's just a meddler and I love all of it. But we'll see. That being said, as we kind of wrap up, I mean, our partnership has been extraordinary in the obvious, like the theater aspect with Imagination Station. I mean, you've guided us and directed us, and then, we're able to be the kind of partners where it's like, I hate that idea. And we could we work it out together. And we're not afraid at this point, we're not afraid to tell each other the truth, which is really important.
Yes.
And to be able to have the opportunity to teach, and it's something that I thought, and you continue to provide opportunities. I'm with regard to suggesting me to speak in Brockport.
What are you going to be doing? Who are you next week? Who are you? What are you doing?
Keynote speaker. Yes. And honestly, it's through encouragement that you've given me to tell my story, to tell the truth. And these things continue to resonate with me because I think in this world of technology, we can get so lost in trying to present this idea of yourself. And the bravest thing to do, the most powerful, the most impactful thing is to tell the truth. And I appreciate you so much for helping and guiding me in that realm. I mean, you've done it all. The directing, the children's theater, the managing role at Blackfriars Theater and professional actor, and now you're continuing to build on your career as a professor at SUNY Brockport. So I always say the best is yet to come, but it's very motivating in essence that somebody is doing what they love, and that is, it couldn't have always been easy.
It wasn't always easy.
Yeah.
It wasn't always easy, but I think, what you just said that's very sweet. But what you just said about, supporting you to tell the truth or to tell your story, that's easy. Because what you do, you do it so effortlessly and so beautifully and so honestly and genuinely, and you wear your heart out there so that other people can see that and can learn to be brave and take risks and do what you've done for yourself, for themselves. And that's beyond authentic. That's just being human. That's like the truest tenet of being human. And it's powerful. And I think that's why we want you to be out there doing that, because you're changing lives. You're changing lives through the Human Rights Campaign. You're changing lives through the keynote speaker at Brockport Diversity Conference. You're changing lives. And that's important.
Thank you. And as we have these conversations, I think to myself, oh my gosh, see, this is that opportunity where, conservative, I doubt a conservative is watching me right now, but in the chance that somebody's listening in their home and they can hear this, or in the chance that somebody's listening and they can have that conversation at the dinner table and uncle whoever or aunt whoever has something to say, that maybe these conversations can make an impact and change and make small changes within those family units. And really that's ultimately what I look for. So now we've come to the point of the conversation where dad jokes. Do you have some dad jokes prepared?
I do. I brought one since I wore my superhero t-shirt and sweatshirt with me. I brought a superhero dad joke.
Okay, go for it.
Are you ready? All right. What are Silver Surfer and Iron Man called when they team up?
What are they called?
Alloys.
I love it. Okay. Where do school supplies go on vacation?
Wow. Where?
Pennsylvania. I don't know why. Oh, that's because that's where I'm from. And I still have, a love for the Amish. Okay, go ahead.
When it's raining cats and dogs, what do you have to watch out for?
What?
Stepping in poodles.
Stepping in poodles. What did the mother spider say to the teen spider?
What?
You're spending too much time on the web. I love dad
On the
jokes.
www.
Yeah, on the www, on the World Wide Web. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for joining us today. And it's
fun.
I always say it's interesting to have this length of time making eye contact.
I know.
Even Mr. Davis was like, what? We're staring at each other. We're married 21 years. Okay. So I want to thank you for watching, for tuning in, for listening, and of course, for liking and sharing. And listen, if you are in the Rochester area and you need to have a studio, and they'll remodel the whole place for you, just for you. No, they'll put up some pictures and light some candles and have the best time doing it and the best recording technology. That's the word. Anyway, at Rock Box Studios and Productions. So come join us. But remember, there's always time for kindness.